I never thought breaking up would lead to nightmares, but that's exactly what happened. We had been together for almost 2 years, and I thought we had something real. Her name was Emma, and she was everything I thought I wanted. Beautiful, intelligent, and passionate. But as time went on, subtle changes began to surface. At first, it was little things. Her texts became more frequent, her calls longer. I dismissed it, believing she just wanted to stay connected. But soon her behavior escalated into something I couldn't ignore. One evening, after a particularly stressful day at work, I decided to end things. I felt it was the right decision. Despite her pleading and tears, Emma snapped. She stormed out, slamming doors and yelling accusations at me. I thought that was the end of it, but it wasn't. The next day, I started receiving messages from her on every platform. Texts, emails, even social media. They were filled with anger and desperation, pleading for another chance, blaming me for everything. I tried to ignore it, blocking her number and tightening my privacy settings. But Emma found ways around it. She showed up at my workplace, insisting she needed to talk. I asked her to leave, but her expression turned cold, and she whispered, "You can't escape me." I felt a chill run down my spine. That night, strange things began to happen in my apartment. Objects moved on their own, shadows lingered in the corners, and I heard whispering voices when I was alone. One evening, as I was packing to move to a new city, the power went out. In the darkness, I heard Emma's voice calling my name, soft yet menacing. I flicked on my phone flashlight, but she wasn't there. The lights flickered back on, and everything seemed normal. I convinced myself it was just stress and exhaustion, but the occurrences grew more intense. My reflection in the mirror would distort into Emma's face for a split second before snapping back. I started seeing her everywhere, in reflections, in the window, even standing at the foot of my bed at night. Desperate for peace, I decided to confront her one last time. I returned to the place where we had our first date, hoping to find closure. The restaurant was empty, the air thick with silence. As I sat down, the temperature dropped, and I felt a presence behind me. Turning around, there she stood, eyes hollow, her smile twisted. "You left me," she whispered, reaching out. I tried to run, but the ground beneath me gave way, and I fell into darkness. I woke up in my apartment, the sun streaming through the windows. It was morning, and nothing seemed out of place. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking it was all a bad dream. But as I reached for my phone, a notification popped up, her name flashing on the screen with a single message. "This isn't over." Trembling, I realized some shadows never leave, and some pasts can haunt you forever. I never thought breaking up would lead to my worst nightmare. Jenna and I had been together for 2 years, and while things seemed perfect on the surface, there were always signs she was more obsessive than loving. I dismissed it at first, constant texts, insisting on knowing my every move, and a jealousy that felt suffocating. But I convinced myself it was just her way of showing she cared. The night it all changed started like any other. I decided to end things, hoping distance would help us both heal. I met her at our usual cafe, my heart pounding as I delivered the words. Her face twisted in disbelief, then anger. "How dare you?" she screamed, knocking her chair over. I left quickly, the weight of her glare following me home. For the next few days, Jenna's messages escalated from angry texts to relentless calls. I tried blocking her, but she found ways around it. New numbers, social media accounts. One evening, as I settled into bed, my phone buzzed with a message. "You can't escape me." I froze, the hairs on my neck standing up. I assured myself it was just another threat, but deep down, fear gnawed at me. That night, I awoke to the sound of footsteps outside my window. Heart racing, I peeked through the blinds but saw nothing. I convinced myself it was my imagination until I noticed a shadow moving behind the curtains. My breaths came in shallow gasps as I reached for my phone, but it was dead. Panic set in as I realized Jenna had found a way to disable it. I tried to calm myself, telling myself she wouldn't harm me. Hours passed and the house felt unnaturally silent. Just as I began to drift back to sleep, a soft tapping sounded at my door. I froze, every instinct screaming to hide. Gathering my courage, I edged towards the door and peeked through the peephole. There was no one there. I exhaled a sigh of relief, only to hear my name whispered from the darkness. "I'm still here." Terrified, I backed away, tripping over something on the floor. My heart pounded as I scrambled to my feet, only to find Jenna standing in the hallway, her eyes void of sanity. "You promised," she whispered, reaching out with a cold touch. I turned to run, but the door wouldn't budge. The lights flickered, and the room seemed to close in on me. Shadows danced on the walls, and Jenna's laughter echoed through the space. Desperation took over as I searched for another way out, but every exit led to the same haunted hallway. Time lost meaning as I wandered, each step haunted by Jenna's presence. I could feel her watching, waiting, her obsession turning into something dark and malevolent. The air grew thick, making it hard to breathe, and whispers filled my ears, telling me there was no escape. Just when I thought I couldn't take it anymore, I stumbled into a room filled with mirrors. Reflections surrounded me, each one showing Jenna in different states of torment and rage. I reached out to touch a mirror, but my hand passed through it, sending ripples through the glass. Suddenly, the mirror shattered, and Jenna emerged from the shards, her form now twisted and ghostly. "You'll never leave me," she declared, her voice hollow. In a final act of desperation, I closed my eyes and screamed, willing myself to wake up from this nightmare. The room dissolved, and I found myself back in my bedroom, gasping for air. My phone buzzed again, this time with a single message. "I'm always watching." I glanced around, but everything seemed normal, or so I thought. Days turned into weeks, and the fear never fully left me. Sometimes late at night I hear whispers and footsteps, reminders that Jenna's obsession wasn't just a memory. The line between reality and nightmare blurred, leaving me to wonder if escaping her was ever truly possible. Now every shadow, every sound keeps me on edge, knowing that somewhere out there, Jenna is still watching, waiting for her chance to pull me back into the darkness. I never thought breaking up would lead to something so terrifying. When Sarah and I first met, it was like something out of a fairy tale. We connected instantly, sharing dreams and secrets under the starlit sky. For 2 years, everything seemed perfect, but slowly, the shadows began to creep in. Sarah became possessive, her messages turning from sweet to suffocating. At first, it was just little things, texts at odd hours, constant checking in. I dismissed it, thinking it was just love. But as time went on, her behavior escalated. She showed up unannounced at my work, her presence overwhelming. I started feeling trapped, suffocated by her need to control every aspect of my life. One night, after a particularly intense argument, I made the difficult decision to end things. I knew it was the right choice, but fear twisted in my stomach. Sarah's reaction was immediate and brutal. She refused to accept the breakup, her messages turning dark and threatening. I tried to block her number, but she found other ways to reach me, through friends, social media, even anonymous emails filled with sinister warnings. Weeks passed, and I began to notice unsettling changes around me. Objects in my apartment were moved, items went missing, and cold drafts swept through rooms even when windows were closed. At first I rationalized it as a stressed mind, but the fear in my heart told me otherwise. One night, I woke to the sound of whispers echoing through the halls. Shadows danced on the walls, shapes shifting just beyond my line of sight. My phone buzzed with a new message. "You can't escape me." Desperate for peace, I considered moving away, but something held me back. Then the nightmares began. Vivid and horrifying, they felt almost real. Sarah's face contorted in rage, her eyes hollow and empty. I couldn't sleep, every moment haunted by her presence. One evening, as I tried to leave the house, the lights flickered and the door wouldn't budge. The room grew colder, and the whispers intensified, filling my ears with chilling promises of retribution. In a last attempt to end the nightmare, I sought help from a local priest. He listened to my story with grave concern and agreed to perform a cleansing ritual. As he began, the temperature dropped further, and Sarah's spirit manifested before us, her form twisted with anger, eyes burning with an unearthly light. The priest chanted, trying to soothe her tormented soul, but she wasn't appeased. With a scream that echoed through the very walls, she vanished, leaving behind an oppressive silence. Relieved yet still shaken, I felt a temporary peace, but the experience changed me. I moved to a new city, hoping to leave the past behind. Yet sometimes in the silence of the night, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure watching from the window and hear the faint whisper, "You can't escape me." I try to remind myself it's over, but deep down, I know the nightmare isn't truly gone. It's out there, lurking in the darkness, waiting for the moment to strike again. If you've ever felt the grip of a relationship turn dark, share your story. You're not alone, and sometimes understanding the horror can help us find the strength to move forward.